This is a summary of some of the file input functions that we've seen. There are basically four methods of reading from a file. We can use load if the file has a regular format that looks like a matrix. So in other words, the same type of values on every line, the same number of values on every line in the file. So if it looks like a matrix, we can use load to read it into a matrix variable. If not, we have to use the lower level file input functions. To use these, we have to open the file first, and then we have to close the file when we're done. We've seen three choices. The fscanf function will read into a matrix, converting all of the characters from the file to their ASCII equivalents. The textscan function will instead read into cell arrays, so every column from the file gets stored in a separate column vector into a cell array. And the fgetl function can be used in a loop to read each line from the file as a string. Then once we have the string, we use string manipulation functions to break the string into pieces and to convert the strings that store numbers to actual numbers. The format of the lines, or think of it as columns with textscan, has to be specified for both the textscan and the fscanf functions. So the format has to be consistent in the file to be able to use these functions. Here's question number 3. When do you use load and save versus the lower level file input-output functions? Let's take a look at some common pitfalls in working with file input and output functions. First one is misspelling a file name. If you do that, the file open is not going to be successful. Another pitfall is really using a lower level file input or output function when you could in fact use load or save. Remember that load and save are the easiest to use if you can use them. Another pitfall is forgetting that the fscanf function reads column-wise into a matrix, so every line in the file is read into a column in the resulting matrix. Also forgetting that fscanf converts the characters in the file to their ASCII equivalents in the matrix. And finally, forgetting that textscan reads into cell arrays, so curly braces are generally used to index into the cell array. Here are some programming style guidelines. Always make sure that you close files after you've opened them and used them. Always check to make sure that the file open is successful and also that the file close is successful. Make sure that you actually read everything from a file. So for example, if you're using fgetl in a loop, make sure you use a conditional loop that goes until the end of the file is reached rather than just assuming that you know how many lines there are in the file and using a for loop. Also be careful to use the correct formatting string when you're using either fscanf or textscan. And finally, when you want to store variables in .mate files, it makes sense to store groups of related variables in separate .mate files.